June 22nd of 2018, the biggest content creator meetup event in the history of YouTube would occur, with over 1,000 people booked in attendance, and this event would go down in history to be known as Tanacon, an event by Tanacon for Tanacon fans, with major events happening such as a ballroom concert party, featured content creators such as Shane Dawson, James Charles, and many more, but most importantly, a chance to meet the lady of the hour, Tanacon. However, this con in particular did not go according to plan, from the overabundance of litter accumulated due to the over thousands of fans waiting outside. And yes, you heard that right, when it was expected that only around 1,000 people would be in attendance for Tanacon. Estimates vary from how many people were really there at Tanacon, from around 5,000 up to 20,000 people in attendance, along with just the short time frame that Tanacon was put together, often being quoted taking 30 to 40 days to put together, and even being quoted by Tanacon herself. So I think it's clear to say from the conception of Tanacon, it was doomed to fail. And that brings us into the discussion of this video, Tanacon, the con that conned the internet. And I think where we need to start is just how this disaster of a convention began, when on the day of April 2nd of 2018, Tanacon would release a video called Why I Won't Be Attending VidCon 2018, a rant where Tana would go into depth on why in years past she was very undermined at VidCons 2016 and 2017, where following the upcoming VidCon 2018, YouTube would subsequently ban Tana from attending VidCon due to her controversial past at VidCons years prior. So with this, in the video, Tana would tease her own idea at an event. She would come up with the idea when she realized, hey, a lot of my fans who come to meet me, who attend VidCon, just come to meet me, where Tana would soon realize that all she could do is make her own VidCon-like get-together, where soon following this, that's when the idea of Tanacon came to life. So around a month and a half later, entertainment company known as Good Times worked with Tanacon to create Tanacon, and working with this very cheap, inexperienced company would prove to be a major downfall for Tanacon. However, while this was going on, everyone seemed to be very hyped for the idea of Tanacon, from fans and fellow content creators alike. So it's clear, there was a lot of hype for this con, so much so, people were touting it as the greatest idea in YouTube history. Around 1 week before Tanacon, and hype up to Tanacon, Tana would release a video on the day of June 14th of 2018 to her loyal fans to get them further pumped up for Tanacon.
VidCon tweeted about Tanacon. I had a full-fledged emotional breakdown. And not good, not bad. I was flooded with so many emotions, and I sat down in front of the camera and I decided to talk about it. And I totally meant to upload it the next day. God, I should get that tattooed on me in like every language. But I ended up going to Hawaii, and now I'm back, and now I'm uploading it. But it's been a week, and in Tana's world, a week is like 3 years. So many crazy things have happened since I filmed that video. Basically, when I sat down to film that video, I hadn't really announced any of my special guests for Tanacon or talked about it or anything like that. I was more just being emotional and rambling, and yeah, you'll see that in a second. Now, a week later, so much has happened.
So as you can tell, this event was getting so big, even VidCon itself tweeted about Tanacon 1 month after her conception video of Tanacon. As well as this, Tana would also reveal on Twitter that, as previously mentioned, over 1,000 people would be in attendance for Tanacon. And as well as this, from the official Tanacon Twitter, it would be revealed that registration would start at 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., further saying that the registration would take place in the parking lot behind the Marriott Anaheim Suites to look for the big white tents as the lineup spot, to furthermore go by your last name. And I think it's safe to say people knew exactly where the lineup spot was. The only problem was, I can imagine not too many people were lined up with their last name in mind. But as it would soon be revealed, names going by last names wouldn't be the only problem at Tanacon. As a matter of fact, it would be the least of their problems. To start, water was a major problem at Tanacon, with reports of people getting extremely dehydrated and passing out due to high heat rates on that day reported, to even being up to over 75 degrees hot that day on the 22nd. As well as this, multiple reports of sunburn injuries happening due to waiting in the hot sun for multiple hours on end. Furthermore, people were seriously starting to get pissed off outside of the convention, with multiple ways of people showing it.
What hour are we on, guys? Hour four of no shade, hot fucking sun, as featured fucking creators who paid to come to an event that didn't have a separate VIP line. Still not inside of Tanacon. There's a possibility we may not actually get inside, and I am missing a day of VidCon for this because I wanted to support her. Did want to. Not so sure I want to now. I get that she's trying. But come on,
And if it
bitch,
couldn't get any
please.
worse, on cars, people were drawing inappropriate images and words on cars, more than likely in anger and frustration due to how long people were waiting in line. And sure, it's one thing if people waiting in line were all grown adults, but when you consider the fact that Tana's main audience is typically kids around the prepubescent age of 13 to 17, having a $70 gift bag such as Tanacon themed condoms isn't really an appropriate thing to advertise for your brand. And speaking of paying for a lot of money for something useless, another reason why people were also getting pretty pissed off was due to the fact that people were easily paying a lot of money just to try to get in the venue, with basic tickets starting as low as $1, with VIP tickets going all the way up to $65. Along with the, as previously mentioned, $70 Tanacon goodie bag, people were easily paying a minimum of $135. And for what? So over 5,000 people could be outside in the hot sun with an extreme lack of food and water. And you might be asking, what about the Tanacon goodie bags that everyone was paying $70 for? Well, I think I'll let YouTuber Swell Entertainment, who was there on a first-hand account, explain that.
$276. That's what she said was going to be the price of the contents of this goodie bag. Stickers from PETA too. I can't remember if this was in the goodie bag or if it was when I went to the PETA booth because I got free ice cream. Here is my badge in case anyone is doubting that I was actually there. Jelly wristband. I grabbed a lot. Gucci princess, safety hazard, featured creator, mother asshole. And a really pretty font, and I actually will wear this. I think that's hilarious. More PETA stickers, Tanacon grips for your phone. We got some Oevo stickers, and there's photos of these ending up on the ground after the fact. And then I got a bunch of these. Tanacon condoms. And some people are upset that these were actually in the goodie bags because Tana does have a very young following. Her brand is sexual, so her having condoms I think is very on brand. Does this equal the price of 4 times the price of the ticket? No. Also, I'm incapable of flirting, so I grabbed way too many of these. They're not gonna get used. They do expire in 2023, so I mean I have time to figure out the ways of getting laid by then. It's not worth 4 times the price of the ticket.
But on the other hand, things inside of Tanacon were not doing well. Overcrowding due to the population of people inside the relatively average building size, at least in terms of Los Angeles standards, could barely hold the mass influx of people. And as more and more started to enter, it's clear something had to change to make sure no building and safety problems would occur. With this, security and event staff would push guests along to make more and more room for more people. But by this point, you might be asking, what about the activities that were at Tanacon? Well, from what I can find, there were no feature creators at Tanacon apart from the ones that went there just to experience it from the guest perspective. But what about the concert party that was at Tanacon? Well, it was really nothing special. It was just some middle school-like play that some second-hand quote-unquote artists doing cringy songs and dances just to entertain the masses that were inside. And compared to the artists that were promised to come, it was a major downfall on both Tana's and Good Times' part. And apart from some event setup stands, there really was nothing fun or crazy going on inside the event. However, what was a prominent problem all throughout the Tanacon event, there was a lack of food. As previously mentioned, there was nothing set up for anyone to get anything to eat at the event, apart from one Starbucks coffee shop inside the building. So, along with everyone having to constantly stay active due to sitting down not being allowed inside the event, it made it to where it was in a constant loop of exhaustion and fatigue that would occur just inside of the event, despite there being water inside. However, if you did leave the event, you are not allowed to re-enter, unless you went through the impossible line, likely due to saving on space, so more and more people could enter. The only problem was there was no food, so whether outside or inside the event, it's clear Tanacon quickly became a game of survival.
I mean, it's our first event, so we have to be a little patient.
Yeah, there's gotta be a learning curve.
But we've been out here for a while. So.
Like 4 hours.
Bro,
And it's pretty hot.
We're gonna spend longer in line than we're gonna spend in the convention.
Good point.
Yes, I wish I was at VidCon right now instead of this. And note, it's been over 3 hours now ever since the convention opened.
Going back outside, 1 hour 3 to 4 of the event was going on, people just began to get more and more pissed off, and with it getting more and more hot and boring, people started to go a bit crazy. However, the one saving grace that Tana herself did was go outside where the long event line was taking place in an attempt to quell the outrage, but in some respects swell the chaos with the attention that Tana was getting when she was seen outside, with reports of scenes of multiple people standing on desks and climbing up light poles just to get a look and or get her attention. And not just that, but due to the high reported population size of people at Tanacon just outside, reports of a riot potentially breaking out became a major security problem. And speaking of security, due to there being a lack of back checks, bomb dogs, and law enforcement overall, if someone who is not mentally well or with sinister intentions were to go to this con with a gun, knife, or weapon, it could have ended in a potentially deadly scenario for the over 1,000 to 15,000 guests at this con. But back inside, people were slowly being pushed out of the main convention area into the lobby and or outside. The reason why this was going on was because Tana and her associates soon realized how much of a terrible idea and fail this convention was, and as well as that, outside, once the fire marshal arrived on scene to investigate any safety hazards, not even having to go inside, he immediately shut the whole con down due to the overcrowding, lack of security measures, and just terrible planning. That was all they needed to shut down the con. So along with the help from the LAPD, people from the inside and outside were calmly pushed outside of the area of Tanacon. Now, there were reports of a Tanacon Day 2 on a bigger convention site with 2 separate venues, but the Tanacon team, as well as Tana, quickly went dark on that until the end of the day, releasing this press statement saying how they were unable to find a new venue without also risking the safety of the attendees on Day 2, and following the end of the day, nothing more was heard from any potential Tanacon Day 2, but regardless, following the catastrophic failure of Tanacon, it broke with Shane Dawson, Keemstar, PewDiePie, and the internet as a whole went to jump on Tana for this historic fail attempt at a convention. In days following this, the Tanacon Twitter would be shut down, and for days following the failure of Tanacon, Tana herself would stay silent for days while the internet was going crazy. And to put in perspective how historically bad the whole Tanacon event was, people were comparing it to Fyre Festival, an event that left thousands trapped in the Bahamas, and with reports up to days on end due to a man named Billy McFarland being behind the quote-unquote festival. But regardless, days after the controversy, Tana tweeted about the failure of Tanacon, but regardless, the internet was still very unpleased by this response, so much so, even in 2023, if you go to the original Tanacon video released in 2018, hate comments still fill the original video. But regardless, weeks following the fallout, people were eventually given refunds, with the Tanacon organizers having to give over $325,000 worth of refunds. As well as this, YouTuber Shane Dawson, who is one of the main feature creators at Tanacon, voiced his displeasure with Tanacon from how it was run to the way Tana was handling the fallout during and after it occurred, by quote-unquote calling it the worst decision ever. However, as previously mentioned, Shane Dawson took it a step further. Instead of jumping on the bandwagon of hate that Tanacon was getting, he did what he was best at doing, making a 3-fucking-part series about Tana and Tanacon, making around $77,400 to $372,000 in the release of these videos. Well, it's nice to know that this money went to getting people those refunds, right? Speaking of potential fraud accusations with Tanacon, people started to speculate if the whole idea and conception of Tanacon was a scam. So what's the evidence? First, it was reported from multiple sites and from Tana herself that there was around 200 to 300 free tickets sold as a giveaway to promote Tanacon, but where the real money was coming from was in the VIP tickets, selling around $65. Now, estimates vary from how many people actually went to Tanacon, but as a general consensus by what everyone is saying, let's say 1,000 up to 20,000 people were in attendance from Tanacon. Subtracting the 300 free tickets, we get an answer of $45,500 to well over $1 million. Keep in mind, reports vary from what Good Times and Tana said about the attendance size of Tanacon, but when Tana went outside, she was quoted on saying on the day of the event, 15,000 people were there, but regardless, still, making almost $1 million by selling badges isn't a bad way to make some quick cash. As well as this, further on the day, Tana did say 20,000 people were in attendance, so take that as you may. But the VIP lanyards that people bought pre and at Tanacon was the only way for people to get into VIP parts of the building. Only problem is, maybe apart from the ballroom at Tanacon, that was the only place in that the lanyard was useful, maybe at that, and it's not like outside, there was a VIP fast for people to use. As a matter of fact, much like the Fyre Festival scam, reports of tickets going as low as $500 were also a way of making money, but the opposite applies in this case. You see, in Fyre Festival, the average ticket price was around over $7,000. Only problem is, there were no reports of anyone ever buying a $7,000 ticket. Only tickets around the price of $250 up to maybe $1,000 ticket. But in the Tanacon scenario, the opposite is true, where VIP tickets where nobody was ever seen and reported at Tanacon with a free ticket, maybe except a couple, despite Tana herself saying in a tweet that within 2 minutes, thousands of free tickets were sold.
Whether or not there were free tickets to begin with.
All of a sudden, everyone realized they had VIP out in the line, and we were like, the fuck aren't we inside right now?
You didn't see anyone with a free pass?
No, did you?
I saw one person just in while I was editing my video.
Because I wasn't gonna get in line and be like, hey, I have VIP, you know, so we were kind of not really talking about it when we kind of started saying wait, what kind of ticket do you have? Does anyone around us have free? I was like, are you f***ing kidding me? This is a scam. No one believed it. All the girls around me were like, no, people got free tickets. And I was like, nah, dude, I don't think so. They lied. They said, you can show up and go in for free.
The fact that there were free tickets seemed really weird and suspicious to me. I sat there, I was like, who just gives out like 5,000 free tickets?
Was there anyone that you met while you were there? Did they mention that they got the free ticket at all?
No, none.
But wait a minute, earlier, there were reports of only 200 to 300 free tickets available. So what's going on here? Well, I have one of 3 theories. Theory 1, Tana is incredibly stupid. Theory 2, it's a scam. Or Theory 3, it was a terribly put together event that had no aim, organization, and time. I'll give you a minute to answer. Well, if you guess 3, you are correct. And by 3, I mean all 3 theories. First, Theory 1. I think it's easy to say that Tana isn't the most wise or intelligent of people. You could tell that Tana always has a very airheaded personality, from how she talks, to the way she acts, and just her personality overall. So when she was announcing that within a short period of time, that a major event with all this stuff was going to happen, it would make sense that a very fraudulent company would take advantage of Tana's ignorance by promising her that they would work with Tana and oversee the convention and make changes and adjustments as needed that the quote-unquote company knew they couldn't deliver upon. So much so, months after the event of Tanacon, Good Times went bankrupt as a company, and their fraudulent actions caught up with them. And that brings us into Theory 2. I think it's clear to say that the organizers of Tanacon only had one thing in mind when putting this half-ass event together: money, and lots of it. And what's the best way to maximize your paycheck money as they can from the event? Well, let's go over the list. Cutting security. A couple days before Tanacon, just getting staff member shirts with the word security isn't really a safe thing to do, and with no equipment or weapons for that matter. And as previously mentioned, having a lack of no bomb dogs and security/bag checkpoints and law enforcement. Cutting water and food. One of the major problems, as previously mentioned, at Tanacon is that there was no food inside and a very limited amount of water, but outside there was no food or water, with people in line being very ill-prepared with how much basic supplies they needed just to have to be in line. So much so, at Tanacon, an attendee who was waiting outside ordered a pizza, so take that as you may. Cutting basic necessities. As previously mentioned, another problem that was at Tanacon was a major amount of trash accumulated primarily from Starbucks cups, but in general, trash was a problem. So I think it's clear to say trash cans is something they definitely cut back on. Also, reviewing the footage from Tanacon, I could find no single image or video with porta potties in it, but what's weird is that in Plain Rock Vlogs video earlier in the morning, there were porta potties being brought into the convention site, but even then, that's like 10 porta potties, and at an event with at least a minimum of 1,000 people drinking all that Starbucks, it kind of amazes me. People weren't pissing their pants, as far as we know. Cutting event activities. So I know in general, there wasn't too many things advertised for Tanacon, and ultimately, it was a meetup for fans to meet and have a chance to meet Tanamongu and some other feature creators, but when you consider the fact that Tanacon had a budget of at least around That's weird. While doing research for the Century, I couldn't find any report of what the budget for Tanacon was. It's almost like that Good Times went out of their way to cover up any financial reports. So take that as you may, but assuming they had at least $100,000 from ticket sales to do whatever they wanted in terms of activities, at least at Tanacon, they could have done a lot, like add a ball pit or get some real artists at your ballroom event.
I didn't realize that none of this was planned.
They aren't even wrapping it! I feel like I'm at a Jake Paul event. I feel like I'm at a middle school dance. It's like hot and sweaty and like half the lights just got turned on. Alright you guys, well guess what? We've got more. We have more. We're gonna change up the vibe a little bit.
You should really sorry if you didn't quickly sing it. Oh yeah.
He doesn't even have a mic stand.
Let's try it down a little bit.
Before we get back to all the panels and all the Q&As, alright? Got some more music. This poor girl. Right. You look great, sweetie. Love the velvet pants.
If something horrible didn't happen.
She just took someone's phone to play Hefner off of because I guess they didn't have it up and ready at on the computer.
I take that percent like
Now listen, I think I made the point clear that the people responsible for Tanacon cut back on so much stuff they needed just to have a functioning event for money, and the less of the budget that they spent, the more the paycheck they would receive. So I think it's clear to say, at least in some respects, the people responsible for overseeing Tanacon more than likely just had money on our mind. Not at first though. I think at first Good Times thought, hey, if we run this convention with a major YouTuber, this would be great press for our company. But Good Times doing what I think we can say Good Times is best at, when they saw a chance to rob everyone blind, they immediately pounced on it. And for Tana, I think at first she didn't go along with it, but when she realized that there's a lot of money in ticket prices that she could get, she immediately went along with it. And I think it's safe to say in lots of respects, it backfired majorly. But that brings us into Theory 3, which is basically a tie-in from Theory 2. I think that Good Times, along with Tana, didn't mean to turn Tanacon into a scam. It just happened. It doesn't justify what they did. But what I'm trying to say is I think it's clear both Tana and Good Times had way too much on their plate when it came to Tanacon. And like I said, at first, both Tana and Good Times had good intention for Tanacon, but due to their lack of experience on both Tana and Good Times' part, they both had no idea what the hell they were doing. Like when Tana said, quote unquote, the event took 40 days maybe to put together. I think it's clear Tana was extremely underprepared with how long it was going to create an event of this size, and on Good Times' part, they were just a fraudulent company who thought, hey, it would be a great idea to work with Tana and oversee this event to in turn get recognized by the public. But as being the company to pull off the greatest YouTuber event in the history of the internet, however, Good Times soon realized that would take effort and time, with time being something Tana did not care about. So in turn, they were like, screw it, let's just cash out with the amount of budget money we can get from this inevitable Titanic of an event. But regardless, days following Tanacon, at least for the time, the attention was not on Good Times, it was on Tana Mongeau, the person who had their name and face as the centerhead of this disaster of an event, the creator, the heart, the mother of Tanacon. What did she have to say when by this time, post following Tanacon, her fans and the internet as a whole was extremely unhappy and fed up with Tana? Well, days after, following the Tanacon disaster, Tana probably did one of the more smarter things she has done. She stayed silent until the day of June 24th, when she tweeted saying how apologetic she was about being silent on social media, also trying to figure out what her next move would be. However, at the end of the tweet, she did express her sorrowfulness on what happened with Tanacon, further saying she was sorry, and on the same day, Tana would make a follow-up tweet that to mainly owning up to her mistake and not realizing that so many people would show up at her event, also clarifying that she again made a major mistake by having the event on the same day as VidCon, the biggest event in all of Los Angeles at the time. Where Tana thought she could compete with VidCon, it ultimately ended up backfiring on her, but nevertheless, once again at the end of the tweet, Tana would yet again take full responsibility for the failure of Tanacon, and with this response, the public was very divided on Tana's responses with the matter, but regardless, Tana Mongeau's fans could tell that her sorrowfulness with Tanacon was sincere, and even as previously mentioned, refunds were given to everyone who bought a ticket, so at the end, Tana did make up for it, not so much so the price of the goodie bags, which Tana said was 4 times the price of the ticket, which as previously mentioned, was definitely not $276 worth of the price of the ticket, and come to think of it, the stuff that was in the goodie bags was probably the same cost amount as something you would see in a welcome back to school goodie bag, maybe not so much so the condoms, but that shouldn't be something that kids in school have to worry about, right? But going back on topic, there were unconfirmed reports of sexual assaults happening at Tanacon, but these reports were all as of 2023, all unconfirmed. As well as this, days following the event, countless amount of celebrities and influencers went to shit on Tana and Tanacon for obvious reasons, on Tanacon being a total failure. It should be noted that by this point, the event schedule was released, and as you can clearly tell, none of the activities and events on the list did not happen, although there were reports that the Tanacon wedding did occur. However, I was unable to find any news or video or even photographic proof of this happening, so that's still up in the air. But what is clear is I can say that just from the existence of this list, there would have been no way for Good Times and Tana for that fact to put together all of these events and activities just in the span of 40 days, especially with no budget to work with. I mean, for God's sakes, the amount of creator Q&As and meetups is probably more than VidCon has. And I imagine all of these content creators and influencers would have won a nice paycheck just for attending, but obviously, with no money to spend, they were probably like, fuck it, this ain't worth it, and split. And even Tana's best friend throughout all of this, Shane Dawson, wasn't even in attendance, more than likely foreseeing the safety hazards that could inevitably and would occur at Tanacon. But moving on, some people were still unhappy with what happened at Tanacon. Fans and attendees of Tanacon were talking about filing a class action lawsuit against Tana and Good Times for quote-unquote, Tanacon was nothing but a big giant con job, but as of 2023, these charges have seemingly been dropped and or are still pending. And speaking of Good Times, what happened to them? Well, as previously mentioned, on October 17th, due to fraudulence, and probably by this point being exposed, Good Times had no money, so they were forced to file Chapter 7 bankruptcy. However, as of 2023, nothing from Good Times has been heard, and much how a lot of failed events happen, like Fire Festival, there were reports of a potential Tanacon 2 might occur. However, as of 2023, nothing has been heard from that. But overall, 5 years later following this event, Tana has recovered from this con. The true villain of the story, Good Times, is bankrupt, people got their refunds, the internet as a whole got their attention from this event, and over a month later, after the event, Tana released a video called quote-unquote Tanacon, the good, the bad, the ugly, where she would be apologetic and sorrowful and explain how things went downhill from Tanacon. So, overall, I think that Tanacon is a very interesting case study on what happens when a very inexperienced YouTuber works with a very inexperienced company to create an absolute dumpster fire that between 1,000 up to 20,000 people were potentially in that dumpster fire as it burned. But with that, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Showing support of any kind would be appreciated, and as we close out the con that conned the internet, I hope you all have a great day.